In today's video, we're going to be diving into some really interesting stuff. We're switching it up today. You can tell already by what's on screen. We're not going to talk about the tropical system out there in the middle of the Atlantic that we've been discussing because it is still expected to be out to sea as we've been expecting for a couple of days. We're not going to touch on that today. There is an East Coast potential tropical system that we're going to talk about that the models have really keyed in on for this upcoming weekend. So less than a week away, actually, unfortunately. And we're really going to be talking about the cooler temperatures that are on the way. And it's coming primarily because of something we call the Arctic Oscillation, or for short, AO. It has been stuck in its positive phase, which is this one here on the left. And that really just means deepening cold air over the Arctic. So the Arctic is getting much cooler, building that ice pack, the snow pack, and it's really just containing all of that cold air and Arctic air up to the Arctic. It's not sharing it with areas further southward, and that jet stream is staying very stable with not a lot of troughs and ridges. It's just moving kind of just generally around the Arctic. This is highly different than the phase that we are going to move into in a short matter of time, which is the negative Arctic oscillation phase, which, as you can see, the Arctic air expands further southward. We get a lot of dips and ridges going on all over the place. They don't have to be aligned in the exact locations that it's illustrating here, but this is a good illustration to show the troughs and ridges and all of that movement in the jet stream that comes with a negative AO phase. We are moving into this, and there is one other key thing to discuss. Well, I guess I should show you first off the chart, just so that we can see kind of what we're looking at here. And you can tell this is your zero line. This one's a little darker, and above it is the positive phase. So I'll draw a plus. Below it is the negative. And again, I'm going to just draw that. Well, I kind of messed it up, but somewhere around there is that zero line, the neutral line for this. And you can tell that we are in the positive phase. The dates are at the bottom. They're really small, but you can see at some point between Friday and Saturday, the 10th and 11th, we are going to switch from the positive phase to the negative phase. And we're going to be in that negative phase likely for a while, maybe even into late October. So this is going to really change the game with what's upcoming for this Arctic oscillation. Now, I want to show you what this kind of looks like as it's happening. We can see the Arctic up here. These are just your temperature anomalies. We're not super positive. It's already switching to negative, but there is some cooler temperatures. There is some warmer temperatures and cooler temperatures around. It's kind of all over the place. But watch as we just play this through the entire model run, how much warm air is going to build in this area. And watch as we end up seeing cooler air kind of exit this Arctic circle and lower down south into other areas. So just watch this play out real quickly and you'll see what I mean. As we move, we can see the dates on the top right, but we really see that warmth building for the Arctic. We see more intense Arctic air leaving this Arctic Circle area. And this is a perfect frame to look at. Look at all these major troughs going on. We have one here throughout portions of Europe. We have one here for, it's hard when it's upside down, but most of, I guess that would be Eastern Asia. So we see areas of China, Korea, Russia there. And then we see one here for the Eastern United States. It's really just exiting that Arctic area. This is also critical. You guys have heard me say probably that it's actually a good thing for the later fall months and the winter months when we actually see a warmer beginning to the fall, because in the negative AO phase, so imagine the opposite of this real quickly, really cold temperatures in the Arctic. That's building the ice, building the snow, enriching the cool air here. So when it finally does go into a negative AO, it actually makes it more potent. So we are coming out of a long-term positive AO pattern and it's switching to negative. So it's built up all that energy and it's going to release it everywhere. This is going to be a more intense example of a negative AO that I think we have upcoming. There is one other thing I want to talk about, and that is the NAO, which usually correlates with the AO. This one usually goes negative when the AO does, and it usually goes positive when the AO does. NAO, North Atlantic Oscillation, a little different. And I know there's a lot going on both of these, but really you're watching this kind of northeastern Canada, Greenland area, and it's really about, is there cooler temperatures in this area or is there warmer temperatures in this area? When there's cooler temperatures here, typically you get the jet stream, even in a negative AO, just kind of gliding across the North Atlantic there. And you end up with a milder trough pattern. in the east, compared to the negative AO phase, where we have warmer temperatures up here in Greenland. And what this causes, especially when combined with a positive PNA, which is what we always talk about, which is really just warmer temperatures out west. This creates a lifting motion out in the western states, and a negative NAO creates a high pressure, warmer temperature blocking pattern over the Atlantic. And this causes the funneling effect that you guys have heard me talk about, where the cool air really only has one place to go, and that's the eastern United States. We actually see this happen from time to time. I think we're about to move into a phase like this for portions of October, mid to late October here, that can get really, really crazy. So we're going to be watching this closely. Again, just to show you, here's the chart for the NAO. So we can see, again, here's the neutral line. And right around, again, that 11th, 12th time frame, we cross from positive to negative. The reason this typically correlates with the AO is because they're very close in proximity, and they're both determined by the temperatures. So when the AO, the Arctic region, sees warmer temperatures build, typically that's going to extend into northeastern Canada and Greenland. It's right next door. So when you see them kind of changing together, you obviously get a crazy amount of correlation between the AO and NAO, so it makes sense. But sometimes you see one negative, one positive, and that's when things can get really messy, but we're not seeing that this time. We have both players on the field here for cooler temperatures into the eastern United States. Let's take a look at how the past, well, here's that chart again. Let's look at the past 5 days of temperatures, and we've mostly seen the west be a bit cooler, which is a negative PNA. I know I'm throwing around so much at you guys right now, but again, PNA is just these temperatures along the west. When it's cooler here, it's negative. When it's warmer there, it's positive. And when it's in its negative phase like this, it causes the warmer air to typically really build for the central and eastern states. Because this one's hugging the west coast so much, we actually see that warmth a little further west than typical. So much so that the east coast has seen some cooler temperatures here throughout the first 5 days of October. As we move into the precipitation, we will look at our United States temperature anomalies in a little bit, but I want to go over this. We do have a milder cold front coming through here, and again, we're doing this without a negative AO, without a negative NAO, so you end up getting this shorter-lived, much milder trough that moves in. When we look at the jet stream, there is still some dipping going on in the east, but it's not very extreme. So it's going to cool things down in the east, but not substantially. We do get a high precipitation cold front, which is really, really nice here in these areas that really need it. In the southeast, mid-Atlantic, northeast, these areas really need the precipitation, and they are going to get a good soaking here early to midweek this week. This is Wednesday the 8th, and then Thursday the 9th. And something interesting is going to happen right around Thursday the 9th. This cold front, or what remains of it, is somewhat offshore of the southeast. We're going to watch for some low pressure building in here. This could come in the form of a tropical system. We've had models showing storms in the intensity range of about a hurricane, category 1 hurricane, and that is concerning. Whether this is tropical or not, it would be a very, very, very intense system, but considering it's early October, the southeast waters are still very warm, I would think this would be a tropical system, and it would be a really, really intense one. Now, the question is this going to move out to sea like Imelda, or is this going to want to move back in sort of like we maybe thought Imelda could? That's going to be the bigger question. And as we move towards Friday, we see that intensity of the precipitation really just building here off the southeast. So again, we're watching that area. The west of the United States is seeing a lot of activity as well, so they're getting a good amount of precipitation here for late this week. By Saturday, we really see that low pressure system coming together off the southeast. 1,002 here, again, generally off the southeast. Lots of precipitation and energy around. Your jet stream is doing this, so it could follow this jet stream out to sea. It could obviously go against it, and in this instance, we see it really intensify by Sunday on the 12th. Again, 6 days from now. This is not super far out. 990 right there offshore of South Carolina and North Carolina. Very, very similar to some early thoughts with Imelda. So that does raise the alarms. You know, is this one going to trend away similarly to that, or is this one going to break the trend? Obviously, these are all questions that can't be answered at this moment, but we are going to track this system really, really heavily over the next few days. We have plenty of snowfall over the west as we actually get a really big trough in the west. Your jet stream is sort of doing this, where we have a little bit of south, I would say eastern, cooler air We have a lot of northwesterly cold air, and our ridge is mostly located over the Midwest. Really, really warm temperatures there. Strong low over the upper Midwest. It's an intense look. Sunday the 12th. By Monday on the 13th, we see this system almost kind of just loops back southward, and it looks like it wants to hit somewhere near South Carolina, Georgia. Obviously, take this with a grain of salt. This is an early projection. We haven't even seen this cold front move off of the East Coast. I think this one's going to be, unfortunately, one where we're not going to know a whole lot of concrete information until maybe 2 or 3 days before it hits. If it hits, of course, but like 2 or 3 days out from when it could potentially hit. I think that's when the good information is going to start coming in. Of course, it could look like this or it could look completely different, and there's no way to know. But since this system is just a small cold front in the Midwest right now, and it still needs to move offshore of the East Coast, it still needs to develop, and then it still needs to figure out where it's going to go. I think the models are going to struggle with this one a little bit up until we have something building offshore, unfortunately. The Northwest still seeing some wintry weather. Lots of storminess, some snowfall there for Monday the 13th. Then for Tuesday the 14th, that tropical system finally moves in. And by this point, we're getting a strong low. Remember, we have a negative AO and NAO by this time frame, so the phases are all kind of aligning. 999 there, just to the east of the Rockies, bringing some northern Rocky Mountain snowfall and some thunderstorms up there to the north central states. Looking at Thursday afternoon, this low is moving generally into the upper Midwest and maybe going to move into that sweet spot between the Hudson Bay and Great Lakes. We'll be watching for that, of course. As we keep going, it does kind of move through there, and that does give way to some Arctic air that really wants to take aim here at the eastern states for later on in the model run. This all is really aided by some strong high pressure here. First off, over the Rockies, northern Rockies and Montana there. So this is helping to build that warm air and ridge out west. And we just see this cooler air really, really diving into the eastern states. Look at that frame. Sunday the 19th now. I mean, this is just an incredible look, especially for October. If this was November, December, this would be frigid. This would be absolutely frigid. And this kind of reminds me of what we saw later on in November into December, and then, of course, into January and February last fall and winter, when we saw severe Arctic blasts just throughout that late fall into the winter time. Over and over and over again, we saw brutal stuff like this. This is really reminiscent of that, guys. As we keep going, that dips way down into the eastern states in the last days. It moves in on the 18th. Here's the 19th, 20th, 21st. That one moves out, but we still have this kind of lift in the west and trough in the east, and it looks like we're recharging with some Arctic air that's about to move back in again for kind of a second blow. Watch this play out. The first one moves in, moves out, and then look at that. You see that little push there at the end where it looks like we're going to get another bit of it to move in. It's at the very end of the model run, but these models are not wanting to move away from this pattern once we get in. It really wants to lock us in, which makes sense with a negative AO, negative NAO. I know I'm getting repetitive, but that's the reason I hammered it home in the beginning of the video. It is critical to what we're looking at upcoming if everything comes together this way. Total precipitation is all over the place. Obviously, with a coastal system, we would end up with high amounts of precipitation in the southeast. The west and upper Midwest has a lot, but there's going to be a lot of dry areas here compared to normal, especially in the east. I mean, again, these areas doing pretty good in certain spots, but most of the east outside of that southeast area, and that's if we get a tropical system very close to the coast, this is very dry. This is still concerning regardless of the fact that we're seeing precipitation. Not a good look. Now, total snowfall. This is getting interesting. Still tons for the mountainous west. Cascades, Sierra Nevada, and Rockies all cashing in here. And this is large amounts of snowfall. Not too unusual. But this is a little bit more unusual. We see some of the areas in Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan, both peninsulas there, seeing some snowfall perhaps. We have grays popping up indicating some snowflakes. Not really accumulating, obviously, with these amounts, but definitely some flakes flying, which is just a sign of the times, of course. We do see some of the Adirondacks and maybe the northern Green Mountains getting the first little shade of green there, so perhaps some freezing temperatures, some snowflakes flying, perhaps. And I'm trying to play this out. I want to say we even have a little bit there. I'm going to underline it in Indiana and even some of the Appalachian Mountain Range there in West Virginia. I'm underlying those two areas. And I'll play it out because it's so light you can hardly see it. But you'll see it like pop up on the screen there. Pretty wild stuff, guys. This is insane. So this just goes to show how intense that Arctic air mass is. If it can provide temperatures for snowflakes to be flying in some of these areas, it's awfully cold compared to normal. Looking at the European model's temperature anomalies, we will look at the GFS one as well. We see this warmer pattern in the east gets broken up by Wednesday, Thursday, Friday as we get kind of a backdoor cold front. This has honestly turned into a much more intense cool down than we've originally been anticipating for this 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th time frame. This is looking a lot more intense. The greens are 10 to 15 degrees below normal, so that is substantial compared to what's typical. This lasts into the 10th, 11th, 12th. I mean, we see these cooler temperatures just really hugging the East Coast all weekend and into next week. We do end up again, by the time we're reaching the 16th here, with something more reminiscent of a cold in the west, warm in the east pattern, but that is going to change in a hurry. And the first sign of this change is the warming of the west. That's your first thing that happens that creates this bubble. And then we just get this unleashed cold air just moving into the central and eastern states here as we're approaching the 20th time frame. Really intense Arctic air reaching all the way down to the Gulf Coast and Florida there. Again, greens are 10 to 15 degrees below normal, so very, very substantial. That reaches into the East Coast. We still see it around here by the 21st. So this is the Arctic blast number 1 in this kind of little cluster of them. But we can see number 2 already kind of moving down. Typically when they're in the north, they're a little less intense looking on these temperature anomalies because this is the average temperatures for these areas that we're comparing it to. This same air mass is likely to move further south. Those averages are much higher, so these same temperatures are going to be a lot more intense as it moves further southward. So that's why you might see these Arctic blasts move down and you're like, why are the Gulf states getting the most greens? Well, it's the same air mass that was up in Indiana and Wisconsin and Minnesota, and it's blasted down further and further and further south. And it's typically warmer down there, so compared to normal, it is cooler down there, but not actually colder, and as in degrees outside. So we got that next one moving in, and it's all supported by this warmer air mass that just wants to stick around on this model run. Compared to the GFS model, we play this one out, again, more intense with this first cool down, maybe even in the realm of more of an Arctic blast, because this thing just moves straight in from northern Canada and Alaska just into the eastern states, and it lasts days, again, over the weekend and into early next week. And then we warm up a little bit, but this model also has us in a major cool down in the east right around that 19th, 20th time frame with that warmer air mass over the west. This is almost identical to the European model, maybe even a little bit more intense here in the east. It's good to see that agreement. When two models agree on something this far out, it goes from something that you're very, very doubtful about to something where, like, okay, if two completely different models with completely different coding and everything embedded into them, different data, all of it completely different, if they both come to the same conclusion, even if it is far out, it obviously has some legs to stand on. So that's why we get the confidence when we get the agreement, especially in the long range. As you keep going, this one kind of wants to give this one a second wind as well for the days following. 22nd, 23rd, we still have really, really rich warm air out west there, and this cooler air just like free flowing into the east. This would be a crazy way to reach the midway and late point of October. And honestly, once we get through all this is, already 20 days out. Once we're a month from now, your average temperatures are going to be 5, 6, 7 degrees lower than it is right now, maybe even 10 for some of you. So once we get out of this colder phase, even if we go back to a typical pattern, it's going to be so much lower than it is right now. So these cooldowns this time of year are interesting because even if, again, you return to the warmer temperatures, it's almost just segueing you down the road into temperatures that are averaging much, much lower. This is going to really bring on fall. And summer almost doesn't stand a chance to come back after it because by that time, we're almost going to be in November. So I think fall is coming, guys. I really do. Now, be sure to subscribe. We upload every single day, and we're going to be talking about all these things coming up as we just track it together and get to the bottom of it. You can even hit the bell icon for daily notifications when we upload so you never miss one. Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy it. Leave a comment down below. and I'll see you guys in the next video.